You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. The Senate has recommended that the Central Bank of Nigeria considerably adjust the withdrawal limits in response to public outcry on the policy. The upper chamber made this recommendation after senators debated the new policy by the CBN on cash withdrawals on Wednesday, December 14. It did not, however, set the limits or propose what adjustments are to be made, leaving it all to the CBN. The House of Representatives had asked the CBN to suspend the new policy on weekly cash withdrawals and summoned the CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, over the new policy. However, Mr. Emefiele could not appear before the committee on Thursday because he is on an official trip to the US. Now, the CBN had introduced a policy on withdrawal of cash, restricting maximum cash withdrawal over the counter by individuals to 100,000 naira weekly and 500,000 naira weekly for corporate organizations. The new withdrawal regime further sets the maximum cash withdrawal per week through automated teller machines at 100,000 naira, subject to a maximum of 20,000 naira cash withdrawal per day. A sparse Senate chamber on Wednesday morning. Plenary session is supposed to be underway at this time. However, very few lawmakers are in the chamber on a day slated for a crucial debate of the cash withdrawal policy by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Deputy Senate President eventually arrives way behind schedule to preside over plenary. Moving along, the chairman of the Committee on Banking presents the highly anticipated reports of his committee's engagement with the Central Bank of Nigeria on the cash withdrawal policy of the Apex Bank, which is expected to come into effect on January 9, 2023. He gives justifications for the reinstatement of the full cashless policy and nationwide implementation.
The Central Bank latest action on Naira redesign and nationwide implementation of cashless policy are intended to further sustain this achievement in the quest to foster a safe, credible and efficient payment system that is the pride of all Nigerians and the envy of the world. It is neither targeted at any segment of the society nor intended to disenfranchise hardworking Nigerian citizens and businesses as insulated in some parts.
The debate begins. Some lawmakers are bothered about the withdrawal threshold, which they term unrealistic, while some others are concerned about the impact of the policy on Nigerians in the rural communities.
I'm not oblivious of the fact that the committee had made recommendation on adjustment, but this is not enough. As a committee of the Senate, they ought to also have interacted with certain indices to come up with a recommendation or what should be the adjustment. So I'm suggesting that the threshold should be 500,000 naira, not 100,000. And for withdrawal per daily should be 100,000. And I say that this will be in line with what is realistic for our society. Law is made for man and to be able to ensure that there's welfare of our people. We cannot allow rigidity to affect the welfare and the running of people in our society.
In the report, there is a clause that says massive consultation will be held between now and the 9th of January. Mr. President, that's only 2 weeks. And there is this festive period in between. How can you have a massive consultation in those 2 weeks?
The public outcry is too much. If you read newspapers and what is contained in the social media, believe me, people are very much against this policy. But we know it is good for the economy. We know with time, if we give it about 2 to 3 years, it will be embraced and it will be good for the running of this country.
Every day as I sit here in this chamber, I have every day not less than 100 people, laborers working on my farm, and they have to be paid by 5 o'clock. Cash, of course. They don't possess POS. They don't have bank accounts. The last UBA branch in my constituency was closed 6 years ago.
Central Bank should reconsider their decision. They should do 500,000 per day for individual, and they will do 3 million per day for corporate. That will cover any fear of anybody. We have done this in our state for over 10 years with all the amount of industries we are running in Naba. We have done 3 million per day. So I don't see why they should come to 100,000 a week. Yes. It's like crying. Go back to 500,000 a day, 3 million to corporate, and 500,000 a day for individual. And nobody will complain. Senator Bukachwa will not complain for his swabbers.
Every time the CBN comes out to address this question, it's always being punitive. We are putting penalty on this. You cannot force people to do that. Nobody forced Nigerians to embrace the mobile phone culture. But now almost everybody has a mobile phone. And in the same vein, Mr. President, if we try to force people to do something that they are not used to, it just creates a black market. It creates an economy. Right now, I have a letter from POS operators. There are 1.4 million POS operators in Nigeria and counting. They are making a living out of providing cash, out of filling in the gap that banks have failed to do in the last 15 years. Because CBN has failed to meet its financial inclusion target. Now, in one fell swoop, we're taking them out of business. 1.4 million people. Between the police, the immigration, civil defense, we have barely managed to create 30,000 jobs in the last 7 years. For us to now say these 1.4 million people that are earning a daily living do not matter, I think is very, very dangerous. It's probably more dangerous than whatever it is that we're trying to address, Mr. President. So please, I think we should exercise caution.
But a few legislators maintain that the policy will benefit the country.
I've been an investment banker for over 15 years. And and when we are talking about this cashless or not cashless, we should be mindful of the fact that what happened with 3.2 or 3.3 trillion naira money in circulation, and it's only 1.something trillion naira in the banking system. The danger is detrimental to the economy and the security of this country. So we must support this cashless. How much money is it in the rural areas? 80%, of the money is in the urban area. So all what we are saying that the issue is matter of security, is matter of technology, is matter of these communication gadgets.
The CBN Act did not forbid the POS that POS will not operate. But when we are now giving the impression that the policy is killing the POS, which means that we are saying opposite of what the CBN Act is saying. They always said they would reduce the amount they will give out. If, for instance, 100 people come to POS every day and they collect 200, it's not okay. Instead of collecting 200 every day, you can collect 100 naira. It doesn't mean that it's killing the POS.
At the conclusion of the debate, the Senate recommends that the CBN considerably adjust the withdrawal limits in response to public outcry on the policy. The upper chamber also commits to supporting the Apex Bank in terms of transformational payments and financial industry initiatives. The Senate and House of Representatives committees on Niger Delta screened Mrs. Loretta Onochie as chairman NDDC board, as well as some other board members on Thursday, December 15th. Now, this is the second time Mrs. Onochie will be screened by the Senate Standing Committee, the first being for the position of INEC Commissioner. But the Senate rejected her nomination over concerns that she is a card-carrying member of the ruling APC. However, she said she had resigned her membership of the party in 2019. So all eyes were on the committees to see how the screening exercise will go.
The nominees for the chairman and board members of the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) are before members of the Senate and House of Representatives Committee on Niger Delta for a screening exercise. First up is the former Special Assistant to President Buhari on social media, Mrs. Loretta Onochie, who is the nominee for the position of NDDC chairman. This is the second time President Buhari is nominating Mrs. Onochie for an appointment. President Buhari nominated her as Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) in October 2020. However, the Senate rejected her nomination over concerns that she's a card-carrying member of the ruling All Progressives Congress. However, she maintains that she resigned her membership of the party in 2019.
In the Niger Delta, we have it all. We have communities that produce crops. We have communities that fish. We have communities that produce all kinds of agricultural products that have not been properly harnessed. Those are some of the things we will be working in order to bring food to the tables of our people and to empower our people.
However, a senator expresses misgivings at her nomination, arguing that it breaches Section 12, subsection 1 of the NDDC Act. On the other hand, some legislators do not support his position.
I am of the view that the position of chairman is fluid, is not clearly stated that the person should come from an oil-producing community. But let me make my point clear. Please, it's important, Mr. Chairman. I will not sit here and adopt a situation whereby governments after governments will undermine the very act that has created this. I don't mind if at the end, at an executive session, we say, okay, we should make exceptions for this. No. Because if you don't correct this, we will have a situation where persons who are not from the Niger Delta one day will be nominated. The act is very clear. Those who should not come from oil-producing communities and states is very clear. Northeast, northwest, and so on and so forth. For the position of chairman, we can make an exception. But for the other positions, even if we're allowing these particular nominations to go through, please, my dear colleagues, so that we save the integrity of the law we have made, we should make it clear that all future nominations should comply with the acts that governs the nominations.
When we had a reason to turn down the presidential nomination of this same nominee in the Senate, it was because the position for which he was nominated was the position of an umpire, electoral umpire. And there were members of the public who were concerned that because she is a card-carrying member of a political party and a presidential aide, an active one, she was not the best person. And in the Senate, specifically in the Senate Committee on Electoral Matters, where I'm also a member, we took into cognizance the concern of the public. Today, in the Senate, we are faced with a different scenario. She has been nominated as a representative from an oil-producing state and for the purpose of holding a political appointment for which she is eligibly qualified. And that's our position. And I wanted the public to be clear on this.
We need to be more guided. We have appointed the chairman from our state before that is not from the local government where they produce oil, Chifoyema Ugochukwu. And nobody can tell us to reject this woman.
Another nominee for the NDDC board, Mr. Charles Ogunmola, does not have the backing of the senators from his state.
The person presented here this afternoon is not from my senatorial district, he's from Owo. They don't produce oil there at all. And we, the three senators, jointly, we wrote a petition to the Senate President, and I have a copy of it here. 3 of us signed that he's not suitable because he's not from that area.
The committee is expected to come up with a report from this screening exercise and make recommendations to the Senate on the status of these nominees.
Welcome back to the Gavel. Now, staying with the Central Bank of Nigeria's withdrawal of cash policy, the Senate recommended that the CBN considerably adjust the withdrawal limits in response to public outcry on the policy. We had a chat with the federal lawmaker, Senator Odius Okalu, on what he feels an adjustment should be.
Yes, I'm a vice chairman of the committee, and when our committee met, we did not put any figure. So even when the Deputy Senate President were telling me in the floor of the House, but you signed. I said, yes, I signed. But there's no time the chairman of the committee, and I wasn't calling Senate to recommend a figure for the central bank. I'm calling Senate to douse the tension that will go back as a committee, Senate Committee on Finance, to go to central bank and continue negotiating and talking with them, the cry out of Nigerian people. We cannot make anything, we cannot ask central bank to put 1 naira or 2 naira. It's not under, we don't have such powers. We made the law, unless there's amendment on that section of the law. The law gives central bank absolute power. The governor of central bank is right. His deputy governors, they were right. The central bank directors, they are right. They have absolute power to not even to listen to President Buhari. So what I said, I wanted, we are in our state, since 10 years ago, we have been on 500,000 limit for individual daily. And we have been on 3 million limit for corporation. So why don't we continue with that? Since we have tested that and it's working, why don't we continue with that? With inflation and other things, you cannot do 100,000 a week. So I was pleading with the Senate to do a recommendation by Senate Committee on Finance. We cannot mandate central bank that you must go and put this amount. It's impossible because they are autonomous.
Now, some would say good policy, but wrong timing, particularly close to the election. We are seeing the CBN roll out 2 very strong policies, close to the election. Do you agree with those who say this is a wrong timing for this kind of policies to be rolled out?
Well, if we're honest people, there's nothing disruptive. What time will be good time?
Mid-February, yeah?
It's just we have started. I asked them to extend it to 31st of April. You were in the floor of the House. The day I also said that left for me, we can extend to 31st of April.
Now, you are on the committee of Niger Delta, where the Joint Committee, Senate and House of Representatives, screened the chairman and board members of the NDDC, that's the nominees. Now, we saw 1 or 2 lawmakers make the observations against the confirmation of Mrs. Loretta Onochie, citing relevant sections of the NDDC Act as regards her exact, not only her state of origin, where she comes from specifically in Delta State. Do you agree with this position?
The chairman have no problem because the section of that law did not ask that the chairman cannot be cleared by the Senate. I have been a governor, and when I was governor, President Olusegun Obasanjo appointed a chairman from my state, Chief Onyemugochukwu. He was from my state. I'm from Umuahia, not local government. We have no oil there for today. I don't know about tomorrow. And we cleared him in the Senate. So why must this woman be different? Because she's a woman? Because people want to go after her? Because she was brought before for INEC? People should stop all this mini and minor hatred. We are Nigerians, and we are Nigerians. We are going to clear that woman because there's nobody except God can stop not to clear that woman because she's qualified. If 1 or 2 people, you saw the members of the committee, only 2 people were against her. Even if we are voting, we are 29 there, and only 2 people say no. So you have 27 saying yes. We will clear the woman because it's the right thing to do.
Let's take a look at more stories in the House of Representatives during the week.
During Wednesday's plenary in the House of Representatives, a number of bills were scheduled for second reading. Interestingly, some major ones would eventually suffer rejection. With over $20 billion of diaspora remittance to Nigeria in 2021 alone, Honorable Bamidele Salam seeks the support of the House to establish a diaspora trust fund.
There are so many Nigerians in every part of the world who are willing to give back to the society, who are willing to support noble causes in Nigeria, but do not have the right information, the right channel on what they can put in their hard-earned resources to support in the local economy. And I believe very strongly that if we have this framework of the Intervention Trust Fund, it will substantially assist them as a place where, as a one-stop shop where they can make recourse to get necessary information on investment, on social support, on charity work, and every other thing that they need to do within the Nigerian economy.
Lawmakers, however, consider the bill irrelevant.
I think what will be germane is for Honorable BS to address us on the economics, of this bill. Where is the accruals going to come from? Is it from government? Is it from those in the diaspora? Or is it a matter of willingness? Is it going to be taxed? So that there should be clarity on what we are to do and for what purpose will the fund be meant for. He cited the idea of University of Ibadan, where there was a trust fund. If that could be done without legislation, it means that people who have a common interest in an area can use their discretion administratively to establish a fund for that purpose.
When you hear colleagues moving into a particular direction, it is only wise to move to the direction of that wisdom, to take the wisdom behind their own submissions. So, second reading of the bill step down for further legislative action by the leave of the House.
Another bill to amend the Same-Sex Marriage Act to prohibit cross-dressing is also stepped down.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, cross-dressing as defined by this amendment has to do with the practice of wearing clothes usually worn by a person of the opposite sex.
Honorable, understand the difference and then the diversity in this country. That what a cultural background, so that before you come up with any bill of this sort, you will have been able to aggregate the various interests before coming up. My take is that you should step down this bill for further legislation.
I rise to step down this bill as requested by the chair. I saw some.
Thank you.
Next to suffer a setback is a bill for an act to provide for the payment of tuition fees and other levies in installments by students in educational institutions owned by the federal government.
And as much as the intention is good, it shouldn't come as a law. I think this is a policy matter that is already being handled as a policy. Most universities have semesters and students are allowed to pay in batches as the semesters go on.
I don't understand why you have to have a law that says that people should pay instrumentally when it's being done by some universities and when it should be. It should be but through policy. Like I said, it's not, we cannot have law for every single thing. Having legislation just to pay instrumentally, I don't see the point, Mr. Speaker, but I agree with the intention.
The rejection of the bill comes 3 weeks after the National Assembly passed a bill for an act to provide for easy access to higher education for Nigerians through interest-free loans from the Nigerian Education Bank.
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.